All right, we'll get started. Welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us. And today is actually the third presentation from the CIEHS Translational Research Support Corps. And we are doing a series of seminars to really let you know what kind of resource you have for translational research. We did clinical research, we did basic research, and today we are very excited to actually have Dr. Sullivan, Janice Sullivan, to talk to us about pediatric research services. Dr. Sullivan is a professor and vice chair for research in the Department of Pediatrics at UofL, and she is also assistant chief scientific officer at Norton Children's Research Institute. Welcome, Dr. Sullivan. Thank you for doing this.
Okay, thank you so very much for inviting me to present at the Translational Research Support Group seminar series. And as Dr. Wong said, we're going to talk about an update on pediatric services. Okay, so there. So I'll just give a little introduction, talk a little bit about PIRATES and about basic science research, our clinical research services, and then faculty development. So in February, Dr. Wong presented a TRSC overview as well as information on the TRSC clinical research services, primarily on the adult side. And then in July, Matt Cave and his colleagues led a seminar providing, again, a TRSC overview and an update on basic science research, as well as an update on the CTRD, which we're all very excited and thankful that UofL has finally been awarded that. And we think this leads to incredible opportunities in both the pediatric and the adult arena. And just a reminder, the TRSC continues to build on previous success in facilitating translation of research, using funding to expand, connect, and streamline efforts using the NIEHS Translational Research Framework as a guide. Also provides infrastructure, integration, and financial support for research in 4 areas related to the elements of the NIEHS: basic science, clinical science, geographic information science, and epidemiology and population science. And it really is striving to support and develop research projects which will involve at least 2 of these areas. So I think as we look at this, one of the things we're very excited about is the opportunity for pediatrics to play a role in this arena as well. So just a little bit about research in the Department of Pediatrics. It's broken down into basic science research, which Dr. Lu Kai is the director of the Pediatric Research Institute, which is where the majority of the basic science for pediatrics is performed. And then we have the clinical research and clinical trials. And we'll talk further about the Norton Children's Research Institute. Dr. Kyle Brothers, who many of you know, is the Chief Scientific Officer for NCRI, and then Matthew Hawthorne is the Chief Administrative Officer for NCRI. So these are basically the 2 arms of research within the Department of Pediatrics. So just to give a little bit of background, in 2019, I became vice chair of research in the Department of Pediatrics. And in doing that and looking at our structure at the time, I've really felt it was important to bring some key players to the table, develop a mission and vision for research for the department, and work together to move the research engine forward in pediatrics. So we formed a group called Pediatric Innovation Research Advisory Team. We call ourselves PIRATES. I actually gave them black eye patches at one of our first meetings. Anyway, there's 14 members from the Department of Pediatrics and other pediatric subspecialty who are part of this group. And we developed a mission statement, and our mission statement was to create new knowledge with the goal of improving health and disease outcomes of children and their families. And then our vision was to be a leader in the discovery and validation of new knowledge in a way that improves child health and healthcare delivery locally, nationally, and globally. This group meets monthly, and as we have met and kind of moved things forward as we work through different issues related to the integration. And then after the integration, we decided that, as we become more academically productive and are looking for grant applications, etc., we need to have greater scrutiny over what is submitted and really try and help build our junior faculty so that what they put in is really good quality. And so we created the Scientific Protocol Review Committee. And so if there's a competitive award, like for the Pediatric Cancer Research Trust Funds, we use the Scientific Protocol Review Committee to review the concept proposals, make a determination if what is being proposed needs to move forward, or if there's specific instructions for how the proposal should be structured. And so this has been very useful in helping us write grants, write proposals that are of a higher quality and hopefully have a better chance of being funded. This review committee has a rotating membership, and we really feel it's important to mentor junior faculty. So we have 2 junior faculty on this committee and 3 senior faculty, and that has really worked very well and still kind of a work in progress as we continue to mature. But this work with pirates has been very helpful to our success. So in relation to the Pediatric Research Institute, like I said, Dr. Lou Kai is the director. He has a number of other faculty who work with him, and they are pictured here. And as you can see, I've bolded the different research interests that they have that are related to topics that CIEHS would also be interested in, with the environmental metal neurotoxicity, and then the environmental impact on child health related to exposures, etc. So this has been a group that has really had a very strong interest in that area. There's other faculty who work with them, Dr. Greg Barnes, who is also a CIEHS member, and he leads the Environmental Justice and Health Disparities and Climate Change and Health Research Interest Group, which is a long title. But he has a big interest in the impact of neuroinflammation in neurodevelopmental disorders, primarily autism disorders, and what neuroenvironmental toxicity might be causing or increasing the severity of the signs and symptoms of autism spectrum disorder. Dr. C is a hematologist oncologist and is very interested in stem cell transplant and cellular therapies, and has some translational collaboration with PRI faculty. And then Dr. Watson and Dr. Wintergurst are both endocrinologists, but they have done a number of translational research projects with Dr. Lou Kai and his team there. In addition, we have 2 new general surgeons who have joined the ranks, and Stuart Carter and Christine Buonpani. Dr. Carter is interested in exhaled breath condensate as a non-invasive monitoring technique in severe pediatric pulmonary inflammatory states. So basically critically ill children with pulmonary inflammatory processes going on. And so he's been sampling those from the ventilator and conducting research in that area, and it's gotten some funding to do that. And then Christy Buonpani, most recently, has submitted a proposal for investigating the impact of environmental contaminant exposure during pregnancy on premature birth and neonatal health. And she is very enthusiastic and I think is going to be very successful as a researcher. She has received some funding to establish a pediatric basic science research lab and is just working diligently to do that. So there's been a lot of collaboration, both within the Department of Pediatrics, within UofL, and also with outside institutions, from faculty members at PRI. Like I said, they've done some work with endocrinology. They did some work with zinc and metals in children with diabetes, have also looked at some of the cardiotoxicity relationships with patients who have diabetes. And then with autism, Dr. Barnes has been doing some collaboration with the Speed School using AI in children with autism. And then with cancer, we've had multiple basic science awards from Pediatric Cancer Research Trust Fund, which comes from the state of Kentucky, and that has been now going on for a number of years. And so we have a lot of collaboration with people at the university that are outside the Department of Pediatrics, but involved in basic science. And then Dr. Yi Tan currently has 3 NIH grants, so he is diligently working to fulfill his commitments on those. And we are hoping that we will see additional NIH funding coming to this group. They have some grants that are currently pending. PRI has been very productive. On average, over the last 10 years, they've had about 27.8 publications per year, which is pretty good for the limited number of faculty that they have. I think one of the big successes for the PRI this year was we hired a grant specialist to assist with grant preparation and submission. So Sarah Eustace, we hired her in the fall, and she came in and our NIH IDEA grant renewal was due. So we took that opportunity to use that to train her. So went through the entire process of the grant preparation and submission, and she did an outstanding job. And she has really been working with the faculty in PRI, and I think it's been really very well received, and it's very helpful for them to be able to get their grants prepared and submitted, and for them to have time then, rather than focus on doing the grant submission, they can actually focus on the science, which hopefully this will allow them to have much stronger proposals that are put forth. So that's a summary of our basic science research. And now I want to move on to our clinical research and clinical trials. So we're going to talk about the Norton Children's Research Institute. Well, exactly what is the Norton Children's Research Institute? In July of 2021, there was a joint venture between Norton Healthcare and the University of Louisville School of Medicine to support pediatric clinical research, including clinical trials. And so this was not a merger, but a joint effort to work together. And so they came together. We thought it would go quite quickly, that joint venture, but we actually started in 2019. And so it took about 2 years, for a little more than 2 years, for us actually to get that signed, sealed, and delivered. But it's been a very good move for us. And so we formed the Norton Children's Research Institute, and it's affiliated with the UofL School of Medicine. So the Norton Children's Research Institute is one of the academic research programs of Norton Healthcare. They have several others, as you can see here, but we're going to focus on the Norton Children's Research Institute. So one of the mandates for the Norton Children's Research Institute is that we support pediatric faculty for clinical research across all service lines. So you can see here, there's a list of the majority of the pediatric subspecialists, but there's also some institutes on here. For example, Norton Children's Cancer Institute, Norton Children's Neuroscience Institute, etc. And then we work with the Wendy Novak Diabetes Center and the Wendy Novak Diabetes Center, Christensen Family Sports Medicine Center as well. So our charge is to make sure that we support faculty who are both faculty or pediatric researchers at UofL, but also those who may be in private practice at Norton Children's. So what is the motivation for doing research within NCRI? Well, one of our big goals is that we hope that research will improve care for children locally, nationally, and internationally. And this is a main priority for us. And we want to be able to provide clinical research that will allow patients to have access to cutting-edge therapies. And sometimes you can only get therapies, particularly for rare diseases, if it's being done through research. So we want to make sure that we are able to provide that for our patients. And then for certain conditions, we know that participation in research is important enough for the patient and their families that they will travel elsewhere to get it. And so we want to address that locally and try and have available here, because if you lose a patient to an outside institution for a research study, excuse me, many times what happens is those patients stay at that institution getting all of their care. So we really want to keep our patients here. And it's to the advantage of the patient if they can stay here, because it's very disruptive to families to have to go elsewhere, travel, and if they have other children, etc. So we really are striving to be able to make research available to our patients here. And then participating in research and having support for research are really strong motivators in recruiting many pediatric subspecialists, and we want to increase our recruitment of academically minded faculty members who want to get involved in clinical and translational research. So it's important to have a strong research program. And then it's important for the academic career for faculty members, for them for promotion, for tenure, if they choose to go that route with their research, etc. And it's also important for institution recognition, not just for the university, but also for Norton Healthcare. And so we really have strong motivation to grow our research within Norton Children's Research Institute. And this is just kind of a higher level overview of the organizational chart for NCRI. Steve Wyatt is our executive director. And then, as I said, Kyle Brothers is our chief scientific officer, Matthew Hawthorne, our chief administrative officer. And under Matthew is our financial and regulatory managers. Under Dr. Brothers is our medical director, Sarah Watson, Debbie Davis, who heads up IRG, that we'll talk about in a little bit, and then myself, and then Marty Gardner and Jen Cummings are the clinical research directors, so all the research staff fall under them. We have our administrative offices at Norton Healthcare at 224 East Broadway, but also in the KCPC building, which is on corner of Floyd and Chestnut. Our inpatient team is also located in that same building on the corner of Floyd and Chestnut. Our outpatient team is located in our Novak Center for Children's Health. The endocrinology research team, part of that team is on the 7th floor, where the endocrine clinic is. Everyone else is located on the 6th floor. We also do have some space on 1st floor that we can use if we need it, but primarily the research that's done for outpatients is on the 6th and 7th floor there. So what is the infrastructure of NCRI? How does it support research? Well, we have our support teams, which is our regulatory team and finance team, and I'll talk a little bit more about their responsibilities and what they do. And then we have 3 other groups that help develop and conduct research. So we have our inpatient clinical research team, our outpatient clinical research team, and our interdisciplinary research group. So our regulatory team has the feasibility analysis team within that group. And that team works with the PI, the sponsor, and the clinical team to determine the feasibility of a study. So if a PI is contacted about a potential industry-sponsored trial, then that gets submitted to that team, and then that team starts working with the PI, and they look at all the different aspects of the study and determine if it's feasible. They also coordinate the pre-site visit with the sponsor. And so once they have worked through everything related to the feasibility and determined that the study is a go, then it moves on to the startup process. So that's the feasibility analysis team. Then the remainder of that team, the regulatory team, they develop study-related documents, including the e-consent. They do the IRB and HRO and UofL health submissions. And they also organize a handoff meeting when the study is ready for site initiation visit. And this is the regulatory team, the finance team, and the clinical teams to ensure a smooth transition of startup. In addition, if there is anyone that needs to be at that meeting, say there's some special test that has to be done for that specific study, that team would also be invited to this handoff, just so everybody's on the same page. They know what the expectations are, and all the questions have been addressed before we actually roll a study out. And then they organize and coordinate site initiation visit when the study is ready to go live. They maintain the investigator site file, and we use Compliant at Norton's, which has been really a big help because all of our regulatory documents go in there. We're able to get access for the monitors, and they can remotely access Compliant. The other thing that has been really helpful about that is historically, when monitors would come, they would ask you for paper documents or have you email documents, copies of documents to them. And then, as you know, the average lifespan of a monitor is about 2 years. And so if they left and they hadn't uploaded everything into the CRO or the sponsor's software program, then the next monitor that came asked for those same documents again. So it's helpful to have Compliant because the monitor can just be given access and they can go in and see and get the files that they need. The regulatory team also helps coordinate for remote monitoring and getting the monitor access to Epic to view patient data. They provide audit support, and then they do other things like IRB amendments, continuing annual renewals, adverse events, etc. So they're very key team and important in their function. The finance team, which is overseen by Allison Turner, they do the budget development negotiation, they do the coverage analysis, contract negotiation and submission, post-award account management, reconciliation and closure. And then as part of this team, remember I mentioned Sarah Eustace for PRI, works with grant submission. On the clinical research side, we have Maria Hill, who works with grant submission. So when someone puts in a request to get assistance for submitting a grant, Maria helps organize a planning meeting with the PI, financial team, clinical team, if they need to be involved, any other members that need to be involved in that meeting. They plan, set the timeline for getting all the documents done, who's going to do what. And again, this allows the investigator to focus on the science, and Maria helps pull all the required documents together. And so she really coordinates the grant preparation and submission, and have found this very helpful. Then we have our clinical teams, both inpatient and outpatient, and they do all the things that coordinators normally do: pre-screening, screening, recruitment, and retention, which is key, especially for NIH grants. We've been really fortunate in that our team has been very strong in that. We're doing neonatal opiate withdrawal study right now, and our retention is 82%, and we're in year 3. So that is very good, and the NIH is obviously very pleased with that because that's a difficult population sometimes to retain in clinical trials. So we have been very successful in that. And then they also schedule and conduct study visits and procedures, coordinate procedures if something they just need to schedule, complete source documentation and verification, do data entry into electronic CRF or on paper if it's still on paper. They coordinate and conduct sponsor and monitor visits. They work with participants to make sure they get their stipends for their study. And then they work with pharmacists related to drug and device accountability and administration and coordinate dispensing that medication to the patient. Specimen process, packing, and shipping, and they're all IATA trained, so they are able to do that. They do the data query resolution, again, adverse events and serious adverse event reporting and making sure to keep the PI in the loop. And then the closeout visit coordination. And they also attend investigator mission meetings, site initiation visits, monitor visits, and closeout visits. So they really are key in helping the studies to be successful. And then the third component of that support was the interdisciplinary research group, which is led by Debbie Davis. This was formerly known as the Child and Adolescent Health Research Design and Support Unit. So you may have heard of what they called CARDS. That name changed this last year. So we're all still getting used to calling them IRG. But their goal is to improve effectiveness, quality, safety, and delivery of healthcare and promote optimal health for all children in Kentucky. And their purpose has really been to maximize departmental scholarly productivity, and doing this through collaborations with working with investigators to ensure appropriate study design and methodology development, to help guide them in study implementation, to work with them not just on data analysis, but also data collection, because you have to make sure that your data you collect is quality if you're going to be able to analyze it and hopefully achieve your goals with the specific study. And then they also help with manuscript preparation. And to get their support, you submit a request to access to services, which we'll talk about in a minute. So Sarah Deans is the nurse manager for this group. They have a cohort study team that is working with Dr. Davis on her NIH-funded twin study. And for those of you who are not aware, the twin study is over 40 years old. That was NIH-funded at the time. They started collecting data on twins from the time of birth, following them, I think it was up through adolescence. When the PI for the twin study retired, all that data was just in a box. They were able to take that data and have been able to enter it into a database, and they have been working with the team at UCSF, and were able to get NIH funding. And so now a lot of these twins are in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. And so they're bringing them back in for studies now, and the NIH just funded a portion to also bring in other family members. So there's 2 team members that are specifically assigned to this, and then there's 2 psychometricians, there's a qualitative team. And then also as part of this IRG, they have 3 program managers, and they work with Dr. Mary Fallett on her PPM study, or HRSA grant that she got, which is, I think, in its 3rd year. And then biostatisticians used to be part of IRG, and they still work with IRG, but they're now under a different group at Norton, but they still work with the IRG group. So biostat support is available. So what are the domains of IRG? Well, they do comparative effectiveness studies, economic cost analysis studies, patient-centered outcomes, medical informatics, implementation, dissemination of research, epidemiological, QI, medication education research, or medical education research, and outcomes research. So they have a pretty broad scope for what they support. And so this team, they have a leadership team for IRG. There's a number of faculty that are on that team, as well as the biostatisticians, et cetera. And they meet on a regular basis, and they meet with faculty and help support them in their research. So how do faculty get support from NCRI? So we've talked about all the support that's available for faculty, but how do they actually get it? And that was a question that we pondered when we formed NCRI, but there's been a lot of work done. And so now we provide this link to the faculty. So Help Me NCRI. And so they go to Help Me NCRI, and when they get to the first page, they can submit a request for research support. So they click on this Go to Help, this top green bar, and there's a one-page document that they fill out. They put their name, their faculty, if they're a faculty member, resident, or fellow, etc. And then they put the title of their project, and then there's a check down list, which I'll show you in a minute, but they can go in and they pick out what kind of support they need. And there's also a place that they can attach documents if they've already developed a protocol or another data collection form and they want help with it, or if they've developed a budget and they want help refining that. And there's a place where they can write comments. So that then goes into access for services, and we'll talk in a minute about that. But one of the things that we've tried to do is we all know that timelines are critical and we get frustrated when things are delayed. So we've tried to provide user guides for our faculty. So if they're going to do a chart review, this first box here, there's instructions for submitting your retrospective chart review to the IRB. It tells them what they need to do. If they're going to do a QI report, they can go here. There's questions they go through, and depending on how they answer those questions, then they get guidance on if they need IRB approval or IRB approval for that project or not. Say they want to do a study that involves a preamble. There's a template here for a preamble. They can go in and download that template and use that for the study that they're doing. And if they want us to review it, then they could submit it back into access to services and ask for someone to review their preamble just to make sure it's okay. If they need a translation, say they're going to recruit from a Spanish population, there's instructions here for requesting a quote for translation of research documents. Case report resources. If they're doing a poster presentation, there's a poster template, a slide template, print my poster. How does that happen from a UofL printing office? What do they need to do? For Epic and Slicer Dicer, there's guidance here on different aspects of that. Yesterday, I was in a meeting where we are soon, I believe, going to have Cosmos possibly available, which allows you to get Epic data nationwide from institutions that have agreed to participate, which is really going to broaden our scope. So we're looking at how to use that. So there's a lot of exciting things happening when it comes to availability of data that you can potentially use for research. And the Cosmos, just how things work in there, can very rapidly pull the data together for you. So there's more things coming on that. And then we have information in here on just data and technology research, for example, UofL's REDCap, what they need to do, etc. So tried to make this, like I said, a good place for them to go as a resource. If they're going to do a scientific abstract, there's information here on how to list Norton Children's and UofL affiliations on the abstract. There's guidance here on how to select the best journal for your manuscript. So that just gives you an overview of what we have available electronically for faculty members to get help, and also how they can actually go in and get access to services. So what if they submit an access to service request? So It goes in to help me in CRI. They complete that one-page document. Within 48 hours, they should get an email confirming receipt, the names and the contact information of the people who are going to work with them and help them. So this one here, I just have as an example a data collection study. So they would get that email back. The regulatory team, if they had submitted their protocol, would submit the protocol to the IRB and Norton Healthcare Research Office. And once it's approved by the IRB sends notification of approval. But sometimes people are doing things, for example, they wanted to do an intervention in the hospital, and then they want to, I'll give an example of one that actually happened that delayed the study probably over a year. But one of the cardiologists wanted to look at alarm fatigue and how that could impact patient care. And they wanted to know, he's an electrophysiologist, so he wanted to know if he could tweak the things within the system to decrease the number of false alarms, if that would have an impact on alarm fatigue. Well, that went to legal at Norton's, and then because it would involve nurses filling out questionnaires about alarm fatigue, it had to go to HR. So anything that requires a survey of staff at Norton's has to go through AR. And it takes at least 6 months to get through HR for anything that involves an employee survey. So we tell faculty to try not to do things that involve employee surveys because it's going to really delay their study. And for that study, because that was the first big one that had been identified, it had been happening before, but nobody had caught it before. And so that one, I think, like I said, it took over a year to get that study through that process. So those are important things to think about as they prepare that. But the other thing that happens simultaneously when the reg team is submitting the protocol to the IRB and to Norton's is the investigators have to sign a PI acknowledgement form. And so that is sent to them to complete. And then if they are doing something like the physician with the monitors was doing this on a specific unit in the hospital, and if that's the case, then you have to get the director of that unit to send an email to Norton's that they approve the faculty member doing that research within that unit. And so all of those things need to happen. And then once all of those things happen, then you get Norton Healthcare approval. The data can be pulled and obviously analyzed by the statistician then. So we're trying to streamline our processes, but we know that there are still things that slow things down. So back to the feasibility and other support, when we have solicitation from industry-sponsored trials, it goes into access to services, preferably. And then it is sent on to the feasibility team, or sometimes the PI will directly email the feasibility team and say, the sponsor contacted me about doing this study. And then Dr. Watson and her team work with them to determine feasibility and move the process forward. For grants and other projects needing clinical support, it goes into access to services. And then the feasibility team is only looped in if they need to be looped in at that stage. But again, they go in through Help Me and CRI to request the support they need for grant submissions. So when they put in this access to services request, there's a lot of different things they can request assistance with: protocol development, grant preparation, budget development, feasibility assessment, the IRB submission. If they need access to national, state, other institutional data sets, they can request that. Access to local clinical data through EPIC, statistical support, if they just need study personnel to help conduct the study, to collect data, to get consent form, etc. If they need grant assistance, once they receive a notice of award, then they can come back and go in through Help Me in CRI, say, here's my notice of award. I need assistance now in getting this through all the processes, both on the UofL and Norton side, so this can move forward. And then there may be other things that they need that I haven't identified here, but they can, again, there's a comment section and they can put other services that they need. And so it's really been very helpful because they can attach documents into that, help me in CRI, and they have a place they can write comments. And then usually within 2 days, they get an email specifying what services they requested, the individual that's assigned to that request, and then schedule a meeting planning to address the requests that were submitted. So then what is the life cycle of a research project for approval? Well, this is always the challenge. If when you submit to Access to Services, you have everything ready to go, it usually takes 1 to 2 weeks to get it submitted to the IRB, but we all know that many times what is submitted, particularly if it's an investigator-initiated protocol and informed consent, that sometimes there are things that have to be revised in order to meet what the IRB requires, etc. And so how long it actually takes to get it submitted to the IRB depends on the complexity of the project, what the regulatory team actually has to do to get this in final format so it can be submitted to the IRB. And then for IRB approval, that's also variable because it depends on if the study's exempt, expedited versus full review. It depends if they require revisions of either the protocol or the consent form or have some other questions. So all of those things can impact timeline. But we really would like to see from the time that it comes into NCRI till we have IRB approval to be in the line of 4 to 6 weeks maximum. So we strive for that. But we know that some approvals are just outside of our control and can take a long time. I already mentioned the HR approval required for Norton employee surveys can take as long as 6 months or sometimes longer, depending on what they're being surveyed about. Negotiating of contracts and DUAs, sometimes there's delays with the sponsors. And we've really seen that, I think, more in the last couple of years than we did previously. And I'm not sure exactly why, but there have been delays. And then Norton IS requires approval for any hardware or software that's going to go onto the Norton system or interface with the Norton system. And so this can sometimes it's just a flat no, you can't do that, or sometimes it takes them a while to do the assessment to determine if there's liability associated with that hardware and software before they give approval. So that can really delay a study moving forward. Again, something that we've really worked on in the last 2 years to try and streamline that process and identify platforms that we think are safe, that we think will be okay with Norton's for us to utilize. So that kind of gives an overview of our clinical research infrastructure support, what's available for faculty and kind of how it functions. The other thing that I think is really critical is training of the next generation of clinician scientists. And if we're going to build our program and strengthen our program, that is really key. And so there's opportunities for mentorship. We've really encouraged that and are working diligently to try and enhance that. We're trying to make sure we provide ongoing educational opportunities. And I think with CIEHS, there's been a number of educational opportunities. And now I think with CTRD, there will be increased numbers of educational opportunities that junior faculty with an interest in research really can utilize to grow and strengthen their skill sets. I mentioned earlier that we have this NIH ECHO Idea State grant, which is now in its second cycle. And a big focus of that grant is not just getting clinical research into rural areas and getting rural children to participate in clinical research, but also faculty development is key to that. And I'm the lead chair on the faculty development team for that grant. And one of the things we've done locally in the past is provide grant writing seminars, which we have been able to pay for through the grant and open those up to university-wide. And then we also had a speaker talking about writing from a reader's perspective seminar, which is really key because, you know, when you submit a manuscript, it's your opportunity to tell your story and to tell it well for what you've done with your research. And so it's really important that you can write well. The other thing that we have done for this grant is set up mentor-mentee dyads, because the grant has 5 focal areas: pre-peri and postnatal, neurodevelopmental, upper and lower airway, obesity, and positive health, which that's still really to be defined. But so what we did is for each of those 5 areas, we developed our grant to have a senior mentor and a junior mentee that work together. And that has really been very successful. And then the Data Coordinating Center also focuses on professional development opportunities. They have asynchronous learning opportunities there. We're developing a certificate program that is nearing completion for our junior faculty that will allow them to get certificates for what they complete asynchronously. We've assigned them in certain areas so they can do that. And so this is the link and for the professional development opportunities there. And this training is available for non-members. So if you go to that link, it'll take you to this page, and all of these topics are available here that you can utilize. So we have a professional development series that's held on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons. They rotate those by weeks. But, you know, defining a research question, a very important training. So if you click on this button here, it will open up and give you all the asynchronous lectures you can listen to that address that. Study design, other resources, publishing and presenting, grant writing. So there's a lot of resources here that you might find helpful. And so we encourage our junior faculty to go on here and listen to things areas that they feel like they need guidance and assistance with. And the other thing that does is you can look at who presents, and if you find somebody who presents a topic and you find it very helpful, then you can also reach out to them if you want additional interaction with them to help you with what you're trying to learn. So NCRI really is looking at our processes and thinking about process improvement. One of the big things we're focusing on is feasibility and startup for industry-sponsored trials to try and shorten those timelines and get them more in line with what is acceptable. What I think is acceptable, I would like to see it in the 60 to 90-day range, which right now we're beyond that from the time we first get our documents till you have a signed contract and the study is ready to enroll and recruit. So that's one of the areas that we're working on. And then monthly invoicing for our funding projects to make sure we keep all of our invoicing current. And then building our grant submission support team. Like I said, we have Sarah Eustace and Maria Hill. They've both been in their positions for a year or less, and they have really done an outstanding job, but we're continuing to grow in that area. And then creating do-it-yourself options for unfunded research, because there are a lot of those things that faculty members could do themselves if they have the guidance for how to do it, how to submit things to the IRB, what documents are needed. So if we can help provide that on our Help Me NCRI site, that will allow us to have better use of our research resources for funded research. And then we're working to shorten our HR approval times for studies that involve employees of Norton's. So in summary, we have, I think, really expanded our services that are available for both basic science and clinical research, primarily recently through grant assistance. For clinical research, it's very easy for faculty to submit a request through Access to Services, specify the services they need, and get the assistance that they need. And then mentorship for faculty to create the next generation of clinician scientists is really key and a top priority for us. And not just faculty, though, we really want to mentor research staff because that's essential for having efficient and well-trained staff, and also for retention, because we know for example, in the industry for monitors, the average lifespan for a monitor is 2 years, which, turnover costs you a lot of time and money and efficiency, et cetera. So if we can do things to keep our staff, that is really helpful. And then continue to work on our process improvement. So we welcome collaboration with you, and thank you for the opportunity to present this today.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Sullivan. That was excellent. That was wonderful. There's so much extra we can learn. I'll be honest with you, from UofL Health perspective, you're doing a wonderful job to provide support. And I know actually a lot of people, basic researchers or physicians would like to do pediatric research. So I think that's great. So Dr. Keefe, any comments, any questions?
Well, I can tell you, Jan, that I've been serving for just a few weeks as vice chair for research in medicine, and pediatrics is light years ahead of us, in terms of their organization, and I think really a model for the whole university. I think that's just a testament to all the work you've done over the years.
Well, thank you. I think we're very blessed. We have a good team, and we've had, support over the years to help build the program. And so to me, it's really exciting to see where we're at now. And, I think we've really built our base, and now we're kind of adding to that. And so if we can be of help in any way, I'm happy to help. And I see Dr. Brothers is on, and I'm sure he would say the same thing. We're happy to help any way we can.
From my own perspective, I would love to sit down with you, Dr. Sullivan and Dr. Brothers, to talk about how we can make things better for UofL Health for research. So I'll reach out.
Okay, that'd be great.
Excellent. We'll open up to anybody who has any questions or any comments. What a wonderful presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So Dr. Ongla, got a hands raised.
Hi, yes. So I just so much information there. I do have a question about the ECHO program and the grant writing series. Where can we find information about that, and if there's any dates that we would like to sign up for those seminars?
So we did that. We've done it 2 different years. We are currently in discussion about if we're going to do it again. We're probably not going to do it this year, but maybe this next year. And so when we do that, I communicate out to all the university academic research people. I send it to Ann No, and it gets dispersed to everyone so that it's available. So when we do that, we will let the university know, and they can share it.
Okay, thank you.
That's great. And Dr. Sullivan, I got a question. So if a faculty who is not in the Department of Pediatrics and a non-employee for Norton Healthcare, will they be able to access the resources that you just discussed, or they have to collaborate with somebody in pediatrics to be able to do that?
I'm going to let Dr. Brothers answer that question.
Sure. Okay. Dr. Brothers?
Yeah, just one very slight clarification on your question. You don't have to be in the Department of Pediatrics to fall within our purview. We support everyone who's involved in the pediatric service lines at Norton. So that includes folks in the Department of Surgery, Department of Ophthalmology, Department of Ortho. There are a number of groups that are included. So not just us, but yes, in general, if you would like to work through NCRI to do research, you would need a pediatric collaborator.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. And to be honest, it's very exciting. We actually got several pediatric surgeons are interested in CIEHS research, so we are very excited. It's not common to find them. So that's excellent. And I know that actually one professor from School of Social Work reached out to me to want to do some pediatric research. So I will send him your way. And this is excellent work. I'll say something about the CTRD grant too. So I serve as the deputy director for the CTRD grant, and we're all very excited. Actually, pediatrics, Norton Healthcare being big help for this grant, and their financial support from Norton Healthcare to the CTRD. And we're going to send out proposals for pilot projects, presidential scholarship, and also developmental projects very soon. So I know I work with Ian Kim quite a bit. So he serves as a director for financial management. So he's all fired up. He thinks there's a lot of people will come out pediatrics and apply. So we're very excited for the potential. Thank you.
We're very excited too. And one of the great things about CTRD is Dr. Cave was just sort of saying, like, medicine's working on this, pediatrics is working on this. This is really an opportunity for us to work together and not have it be sort of either one or the other, but sort of come up with resources, strategies, et cetera, that really benefit all of us. And we're very excited about that.
Oh, definitely. And I think that's the goal. Dr. Klein and myself, and we're definitely, that's our goal. This is the CTRD is for University of Louisville. And we work with all the healthcare system, Norton, UofL Health, VA, Owensboro, and so let's work together. I think there's so much can come out from this. I've been here for 23 years, and this is the first time I see so much resources, so much alignment for clinical research. So it's great timing.
Exciting.
Very exciting, and more to come on that. So well, thank you, Dr. Sullivan. Thank you, Dr. Brothers. Are there any other questions that people might have? If not, I would like to thank Dr. Sullivan for the excellent presentation. And if you have any question, reach out to Dr. Sullivan and or to